So in the last lecture, we defined two attributes for our point objects in the constructor of the point class. So now, whenever we create a new point object, this point object will have these attributes by default. We can also define an attribute after we create a point object. So here we can set point.z to 10 because objects in Python are dynamic, similar to JavaScript. So we don't have to define all the attributes in a constructor. We can define them later whenever we need them. Now here's what is important for you to understand. All these attributes we have defined so far, x, y, and z, these are instance attributes. In other words, these are attributes that belong to point instances or point objects. So every point object can have different values for these attributes. Here's an example. We have one point object with these values. We can create another point object with different set of values, and then draw that on a terminal. When we run this, you can see we have 2 point objects, and these are completely independent of each other. Each point has its own attributes, just like John and Mary can have different eye colors. So these are instance attributes. But we can also define class attributes, and these are attributes that we define at the class level, and they are the same across all instances of a class. As a metaphor, we can say all humans have 2 eyes and 2 ears. So these are the attributes that we define at the class level, and they are shared by all instances. So back to our point example, here we can define a class level attribute in the body of this class like this: default color. Now for simplicity, I'm using a string here because we don't want to worry about using color objects. That's a different story. So now we have a class level attribute, and we can read this via a class reference or an object reference. Let me show you what I mean. So here on line 12, we have a point object. We can use this object reference to get access to the default color attribute and then print it. But we can also use the point class to get access to this attribute. Let's print both of them and run our program. So we get red and red. Now, as I told you before, class attributes are shared across all instances of a class. So here, before we print the default color, if I change point.defaultColor to, let's say, yellow. Note that here on line 11, I'm using a class reference, so I'm not working with any point objects. I'm working with the point class. Now, when we run this program, you can see that the default color of this point object is changed to yellow. Similarly, here we have another point object. If we print another .defaultColor, the value of this attribute is also changed. So, class level attributes are shared across all instances of a class. If we change their value, the change is visible to all objects of that type. Now, in practical terms, you will be using instance attributes most of the time, but there are times that you may want to define a class level attribute that is shared across all objects of a given type.